We should probably start. Mēs laikam sāksim. Šodien ir apaļā galda diskusija. Paldies visiem, kas ir sanākuši, kas ir veltīta tēmai, kas ir aktuāla Latvijā jau ilgāku laiku, bet pēdējo pusotru mēnesi mēs esam uzsākuši arī aktivitāti, lai vāktu parakstus un iegūtu atbalstu Latvijā kopdzīves likuma pieņemšanai. Nolūkā skaidrot pozīcijas, saprast, kāda ir citu valstu pieredze, mēs rīkojam arī šo diskusiju, kas saucās apaļā galda diskusija. Tā ir latviešu valodas specifika. Mums ir maz droši vien vārdas apaļais galds, mums tāds pusapaļš ir, bet jūs visi klātesošie esat laipni aicināti ņemt aktīvu dalību un izteikties, ja jums ir ko teikt par šo tēmu. Dažas organizatoriskas piebildes. Darba valoda. Darba valoda mums būs latviešu un angļu. Tas nozīmē, ka runātāji vai jautājumu uzdevēji uzdot var jautājumus. Mēs neesam paredzējuši tulkošanu visiem klātesošajiem. Piedodiet, šis ir privāts pasākums, nav obligāts prasības tā darīt. Es ceru, ka mēs visi tiksim galā. Mums varbūt galvenā šodienas uzruna mūsu viesa no Igaunijas uzruna būs angļu valodā, bet mēs pieļauju, ka vairums saprot. Ja ne, kooperējieties, patulkojiet viens otram, gan jau mēs tiksim galā. Otrs organizācijas jautājums. Ja ir kāda neskaidrība par projektu, par kuru mēs runājam šodien Latvijas kontekstā, šeit uz galda, mazā galdiņa, zīmīgā ar pildspalvām un papīra lapām, ja kāds tiem arī trūkst, ir arī izdrukāti likuma projekta teksti, droši var iepazīties. Uz šī galdiņa arī norāda, es zinu, tā ir ļoti aktuāla lieta tagad publiskos pasākumos, par lietājamo bezvadu tīklu. Tātad bezvadu tīkls saucās viesnīca Rīdzene, tur ir jāievada vārds. Vārds ir konference angļu valodā, ja? Conference. Tad var lietot Wi-Fi droši. Tā ir nozīmīga piebilde. Mēs šodien pieturēsimies diezgan tādam brīvam formātam, bet ir daži ierobežojumi. Mēs sāksim ar divām uzrunām, viena nedaudz garāk, viena nedaudz īsāk, bet katra šī uzruna beigās ar iespēju uzdot arī jautājumus, paprasīt, pajautāt, aktīvi iesaistīties diskusijā. Un pēc tam paneļa dalībniekiem klātesošiem būs iespēja arī paust savu viedokli, un jums visiem klāt esošajiem būs iespēja paust savu viedokli, uzdot jautājumus, izteikt savu interesi, sajūsmu vai nosodījumu. Tā ir tā reize, kad to var brīvi darīt. Sāksim tad vēl vienreiz. Mēs ar mūsu viesi, mums esam uzaicinājuši uz šo pasākumu viesi. Tā jums pēc, ka vismaz arī es personīgi lielā mērā pats sapratu, ka ir pats pēdējais brīdis pie šīs iniciatīvas ķerties. Tā brīdī, kad pagājuši gadu kaut kur ap Latvijas Saeimas vēlēšanu laiku es pamanīju, ka Igaunijā notiekošā iniciatīva par kopdzīves likumu pieņemšanu ir straujā tempā tapusi pieņemta. Burtiski nedēļas laikā divos lasījumos, tā bija pirmais lasījums pirms pavasarī un rudenī, 2 nedēļu laikā oktobra sākumā tika pieņemts likums. Jā, ar lielām diskusijām, bet ar lielu izlēmību, ar daudziem interesantiem, spēcīgiem argumentiem, un vēl pēc nedēļas Igaunijas prezidents šo likumu bija izsludinājis. Un es sapratu, ka, kā tas Latvijā ir parasts, varbūt arī tā ir mana īpatnība, es ceru, ka ne visu, man kārtējo reizi bija skaudīgi. Un es domāju, ka šis ir tas brīdis, ka mums ir jāsaņemās un jādara savs darbs un jādara to iespējami labi, ja reiz tāda iespēja ir dota. Lai paklausītos par to, kā tad Igaunija nonāca līdz šim lēmumam, kādi bija argumenti, mēs esam aicinājuši uz šo diskusiju Igaunijas parlamenta deputāti Imre Soer, kurš vismaz ziņās, kā to parasti stāsta, un ir šīs iniciatīvas autors, un ir tas, kas ir šo ideju aktīvi virzījis. Imre, the floor is yours. Please give us the best what you can.
Thank you very much for inviting me. First of all, I want to tell you that I'm very proud of being with you here today in Latvia, and I'm very proud that you're discussing these things in Estonia. Our experience has shown that it has really opened the society in Estonia in many ways, not only about the Cohabitation Act, but in many other levels. Overall, tolerance, acceptance in Estonia, where are we going, what's our future. Many underlying fears have been brought out, and society is dealing with these fears now, because most of the things, it's about the fears. There is no real arguments but the fears, and the fears have to be overcome. That's the only way for the societies to get further. But talking about why we did it so fast is, I guess, just Estonia is a more colder country. We have to move faster in Estonia, and we have less people, so we can run faster. But I believe that Latvia can come right after us. I believe it will happen here sooner than in Lithuania, because Lithuania has gone a little bit even more backwards towards the open society and inclusion. But let me tell you, take you a little bit through the process, what we went through in Estonia, and maybe there is something you can learn here or get some tips how to do it, because our countries, our legislations are not that different, and also the attitudes and people's mind and connection to our past, the societies we're coming from. So there are some similarities, and maybe there is something we can learn from you, because the process is not over, it has to continue from here. So cohabitation law, on the example of Estonia, when 3 years, actually before the last parliamentary election, not this one now, but one before, I was the only candidate for the member of parliament who publicly said that I'm going to fight for the cohabitation law. That didn't exist, such name as cohabitation law didn't exist yet. I said I'm going to be the candidate, and I'm going to fight for the equal rights for all the families in Estonia to be included and be able to live their lives the way they want, and they all have to have the same possibilities to register also. Under what name is it going to be, civil partnership or whatever, we didn't know yet at that point. And then the president, who I know very well as well, he predicted me, if you take this subject, you have to calculate that you will never get back in the parliament. And this decision or this law will never pass. Well, the law passed and I'm back in the parliament. So it is impossible, it's possible. But let me take you through what we did in Estonia and how it all started. We realized that the only way to go forward is to do it through our constitution, based on the existing laws and based on very strong legal arguments, how we can go further. Otherwise it will just create a big legal mess. So we took the constitution, and two parties became leading in that debate, liberals and social democrats. We had 4 parties in the parliament in the last parliament, and 2 other parties were quiet. They just didn't want to say in the beginning anything. So 2 parties took the leading role, and we discussed with the legal chancellor, who is responsible for checking that all the laws are in accordance with the constitution. So I don't know if in Latvia you have that similar kind of position, but this is the person is named by the president, and the only thing this person does is checking if all the laws are in accordance with constitution. And then we sent some letters to him, and different kind of non-profit organizations and human rights movements sent their letters also to him to check if the current legal base in Estonia is in accordance with our constitution, if everybody's rights are being respected. He made an analysis, and he came to an analysis that the current situation in Estonia 4 years ago was not in accordance with our constitution. And why? So he basically published his opinion openly, and sent it also to Parliament, and sent it to the Minister of Justice, saying that according to his analysis, the people who are consistently cohabiting together and who are not married, so any people living together as sharing the same household, being in the same premises, basically living like married, but they are not married, they should have the fundamental protection under the Family Life Act, similar to married couples. And where it came from? Came from the fact that over 50% of the marriages get divorced in Estonia. It came from the fact that 170,000 people in Estonia live together, but they are not married. They're not gay. Maybe 5% or 10% of them have different kind of sexual preferences, but 170,000 people live so-called free marriage. They are not registered, but they live in the same premises and they have children, they have everything else, but they have no protection under the law. If something happens to one party, one of the partners, there's always legal questions. What happens to the house? What happens to the bank loans? What happens to the child custody? Who's going to take responsibility of this and that? So many problems arise, and all the people, not only gay couples, but all the couples living together and not being officially married are unprotected. And Constitution demands that all the rights, all the people's rights should be protected. Therefore, he made a conclusion that all the people who live together and are not officially married, their rights are not protected under our Constitution. And therefore, he said that the Family Act do not... there was another side debate. Side debate was that what is a family? Because Estonian Constitution is... there's a special paragraph that protects the family. And there's a separate paragraph that talks about a marriage. But what constitutes to a family? What is a family? There is no definition in our Constitution saying family is, and it doesn't exist. We have a paragraph saying what is marriage. Marriage is an institution between a man and a woman. That's what we have in the Constitution. But family is not defined. We have a Family Act in Estonia, which is all about concerning everything about families, all the way from legal rights, child custody, child payments, everything. But the Family Act doesn't have one paragraph that defines family. So the big question was raised in the Estonian society, what is a family? And turned out that for many people, family means different things. Traditional, let's say, family protectors said, oh, family is only a man, woman, and there are 2 children. But what about the single mothers with 1 child, or single mothers with 3 children? Or what about your aunt living with your family, who has lost all his relatives and also is in the same house living with you? There's a lot of things like that, that some distant family members are also living with you in the same premises. Are they your family members? There was some animal rights activist who said, my cat is also a member of my family. So who defines what is a family? And therefore, the legal chancellor formed his opinion, and that was the groundwork for everything that followed. What his opinion was, and that basically was the base of all the legal debate. And that's why I want to read it to you. This is the opinion of the Chancellor of Justice of Estonia. That the permanent cohabitation between persons of the same sex belongs in the sphere of the protection of fundamental family rights, which is why the situation where such cohabitation is legally not regulated is unconstitutional. So there has to be some regulation, whatever, but Parliament has to make this regulation. How you do it is up to you, he said. But you need some regulation for the people who are living together and cannot get married. Basically, same applies with the people of both sexes, but they have an option to get married if they want. But people of same sex don't have that option because marriage is only allowed in Estonia for a man and a woman. So therefore he formulated it, he put it in the same sex in there, but actually it applies to all the people living together, and their rights have to be protected. Therefore, the legal chancellor said in his letter to the Parliament and to the Minister of Justice, it's up to you to solve the situation. How are you going to solve it? But you have to come up with a regulation. And he did so 3 years. He came in front of the Parliament, said, Parliament has still not done what I said you have to do. And so that's how we started debate. And then based on that demand of legal chancellor, Minister of Justice asked the opinion of all different organizations, political organizations, parties. What are your opinions? How do we solve this situation? And basically, based on hundreds and hundreds of opinions coming from different organizations and political groups, he formulated 3 choices that Estonia has. And we have either contractual approach, which means there will be a special so-called package of contracts generated by the state, and this package of different contracts will take care of all these things, starting your childcare, starting your last will, about visiting in hospitals, all the things that are not possible if you're not the immediate family member. If somebody gets crashed in a car accident and is taken to the hospital, only first immediate family member has a right to visit that person. And if you're just not registered partner, then you don't have a right even to see the person in the hospital who we live together for 20 years. So that is one way of doing that. Number one is a package of contracts, and you just go to the notary. All these contracts are pre-made and prepaid by the state. You don't have to hire a lawyer or anything, and you just sign the contracts and it's done. Number two is prerequisite based. That has been, this is a Swedish model and used in also some other countries, basically de facto cohabitation. If after a certain time 2 people have been cohabiting together, you are de facto family. And different countries have different frameworks for that. Sweden has reduced that time for the protection of actually women mostly, who basically live together with somebody and do not get any protection from their rich husband, and then one day they are on the street. So in Sweden, I believe, maybe now wrong, but maybe it's, I think 1 or 2 years. 2 years is now, yes, if you know better. If you live together with somebody, you are de facto family, and the law starts to apply to you. It's like an automatic regulation. That was number 2. And number 3 was a registered approach. Means 2 people have made a consensus. Their decision has both sides full consensus that we want to register what we have. So we go and register this cohabitation. And here is the idea where the Cohabitation Act was born. Because if you look back, the legal chancellor's opinion was based on permanent cohabitation. We were thinking how to do it. Different countries have done it in a different ways. There is civil partnership laws, there is all kinds of different names, which pretty much they talk about the same thing, but every country has a little bit different approach. So sitting together with in our party with some top lawyers, and one of them is former Justice of the Supreme Court of the Human Rights Court in Brussels. He's a former head of the Estonian Supreme Court. He was working many years in Brussels, and I asked him, what about if we find a new name that no countries is using, and propose that it will be a little bit softer and maybe more understandable, because if you take an existing formula, let's say whatever, gay marriage, it creates so much antagonism and so much hatred immediately, because people apply all kinds of notions to it. So we decided, okay, let's call it, based on legal chancellor's opinion, let's call this future bill a Cohabitation Act, based on 2 people cohabiting together. If you talk about the Civil Partnership Act, for instance, then you have to first define what is civil. There is civil cases, non-civil cases. If you talk about the partnership, what is partnership? Partnership is also, for instance, business partners can be sort of a partnership. There's different partnerships. So a civil partnership can mean many things, and it's not clear. But Cohabitation Act, like it already almost says what it is. 2 people cohabiting together, whoever they are, they can apply to this. So this is what we did, and we got then all the parties were, because parties will have to adopt it in the parliament, it was up to the parliament to make the decision. The parties gave their opinions, and two parties, as I mentioned already earlier, Social Democrats and Liberals, said we support version number 3. It's the registered-based approach, meaning basically the same cohabitation act. And another Liberal party, former Communist Party, they were hesitant, they didn't say this or that. And the Conservative Party said that we don't need any change in Estonia, everything is fine as it is. The ones who want to register it can just go to the lawyer and ask to draft up some kind of a contract, and that's enough. They can do their own registration. But it poses a lot of problems, because then every lawyer will draft up a different contract, and the third party's rights are not accounted for. Children's rights, for instance, if two people make a contract together and buy a house, then if it's just a legal contract between two people and it's not in state registry, then one of the partners, if things go bad, can sell the apartment behind the knowledge of the other, and the third party buying the apartment is now in trouble because it was not in the official registry that this apartment belongs to them. If it's a marriage, then it's registered in the state register. These two people have purchased the apartment and they cohabit there, and it's impossible for the wife to sell the house behind the back of the husband, because in the state registry it's written on their both names. So therefore this argument did not apply, that you can just go to the notary and draft some kind of agreement and it's done, it's decided. So many other things have to be accounted for. And then the two parties said that we support the continuation of the discussion of cohabitation bill. Minister of Justice started to then draft the bill 2012, and the first draft was already circulated amongst the parties, and as soon as the Conservatives, who were part of the government, understood that now it's really coming to the parliament, they killed it immediately, and the government says the government will either split, but we are not going to discuss with this issue. So for the peace of the government, the bill was put on the back burner and basically forgotten, because it would have meant the breakup of the government. Conservatives said, if we're going to go ahead with that bill, there was three parties in the coalition, Liberals, our party, then Social Democrats and Conservatives. They were the third coalition partner. They said the government is over if we're going to continue with this bill. So the bill was forgotten. And then in the parliament, I gathered together some MPs, and we started to think together, how can we do it in some other way? That not through the government, not through the ministries, but members of parliament have a right also to start the legislative acts on their own. So I put together an inter-parliamentary working group where all parties are represented. Each party is giving input. How far can we go, and what could be done? Let's say, what is the step we could make? We cannot make maybe the full law, but let's make some first steps. Let's say how far we can go with this parliament. And then hearing that there is even some talk about it in the parliament, that it can really happen, the Traditional Family Protection Foundation was created. And I don't know if you have seen pictures of them, but some of them are quite scary in my opinion. But the problem was that they started to get a lot of money from international organizations. And they didn't disclose where the money is coming from. They started actively to take part in the political debate in Estonia, getting hundreds of thousands of euros to their support from some unknown sources from the west or east. We don't know. And then some speculation started to already come in the media. Investigative journalists found out some traces of this organization to quite some scary people, and direct contacts to the east. So, and if you think, who is it useful to divide the Estonian society in two and to create this unstress, we don't have to look much further. We know where these kind of forces could come from. But the fact that they got so much money from behind the borders was really worrisome, because they were actively in the political debate. They were not a party, but they were doing more than some parties are doing. So, but this discussion basically scared away so many people that Parliament floor went quiet again. Nobody wanted to deal with this issue. Then the 2014, the year of the storm was approaching. The tensions in the government rose higher. Elections were coming. There was only 1 year to the election, and the government fell. Two parties who continued, Social Democrats and Liberals. Their basic decision was to continue with their cohabitation discussions, not yet the bill, but discussions. But immediately these right-wing organizations started to name this new coalition a pink coalition and a gay coalition and everything, because they basically wanted to label the new government as one law government. They only deal with this one law, which was of course not true at all, but this was a way of pointing fingers and threatening people. So the government, for the peace and because we had so little time to the elections, government decided not to deal with this issue. If the parliament wants to deal with it, fine, but government is not going to take any steps. And then this cross-party working group in the parliament, which I had created, we started to collect signatures, because in order to present the bill, you need some members who will sign it, and basically even one person can present, one member of parliament can present the bill, but it will never reach any further. If you don't have a lot of people who have signed it, you have no chances of passing this. So I realized that the more signatures we get in the parliament, the higher the chance is at the end for this bill to pass the parliament. But to get these signatures 1 year before the elections was practically impossible. It was so difficult that nobody, I can write a book about it one day. Going from one member of parliament to other, encourage them to just let's submit the bill, even if it's not passing through the parliament, because it will open the discussion. Maybe the next parliament will deal with it. At least we open the debate in the society, in the political landscape. And then we had, I think, about 10 members. We have 101 members in the parliament. 10 members who had finally signed the bill, and we realized that even with 10 members, I mean, likely no more will vote in the final count as well, that this bill will never pass. So there is no point of even giving it in. Basically, it will destroy the 10 people. They will never get back in the parliament, and the discussion is not going any further. And then our former prime minister, who is now a European commissioner, I talked to him because he told me once a very moving story about his own family, his sister in Canada. Now it's widely already known in the Estonian newspaper, so I can tell you the story also. And I asked he was that moment just elected to the European Parliament. He came to Parliament as a former Prime Minister, 9 years of Prime Minister. He just came to the Parliament, was elected to the European Parliament then, but he had to sit 2 months before the European Parliament convenes. He had to be a simple member of Parliament. That was just a window of opportunity for us to do this cohabitation bill. And then I asked his support. I said, well, you have nothing to lose anyway. You are now a European Commissioner, soon to be. You're already a voted member of European Parliament. If you will call the others, you have enough weight that people will come. He told me, Imre, I support what you're doing. I think you're doing the right thing. But I think it's not a good idea if I personally sign it, because many reasons why. And when he saw that nobody else after is not anymore going to sign this bill, then he made a historic speech in our faction, and he told the story. And the story was that when 1989, when he was a mayor of Tartu, our second biggest city, he went to Canada first time. His relatives were living in Canada, and his cousin, the daughter of his uncle, he knew that she is living with another woman in Canada. And she was invited to the house, but she did not want to go because she didn't know how to act with them, how to meet a lesbian couple in Canada. So she didn't go to their house. And years later, when he came back to Toronto as a prime minister already and made a speech, then he saw that these two ladies are sitting there in the first row. They came to listen to his speech. And they had a very nice discussion after that, and he went to their house, and he said it was one of the most emotional moments that he has had in his life. He felt so terribly sorry that he did not go to their house 1989 just because of the fact that there are two ladies living together. He felt so bad that he made this mistake, and seeing how lovely couple his own relatives are, in front of all of you, I will sign this bill. Everybody was quiet. The former longest prime minister of Estonia, 9 years, made such a statement. Everybody knew that he used to be a homophobe himself as a mayor before, and he had so much radically changed. He signed the bill, and from that moment many people started to sign the bill. So that opened up the whole avalanche in the parliament, and we got finally 40 signatures together, and we presented the bill to the parliament with 40 signatures, including 5 former ministers, including the future European Commissioner and the Prime Minister of longest time. That was a pretty powerful force. But that created also a massive discussion in the media, thousands of articles, debate on every street corner, every kitchen. Basically, it became like a wildfire. There probably has never been a bigger debate in Estonian society than this debate. First reading in the parliament after 1 month passes, tension rises, more opponents start to organize countrywide meetings in the villages, bring people to Tallinn to demonstrate, go to the churches to pray that this bill will never be passed in the parliament. The opponent's voice became so strong and so vicious, and it was not just people's their own act, as we knew that hundreds of thousands of euros came from other countries to support these activities. They were actively organized to do so. So we saw that we are fighting against a very big, strong international influence, and there was certain parties from around the world who were also supporting them. So, and on our side, we had nothing but 40 members of parliament out of 101. And many of them were very much hesitant, even after signing the bill, that will they ever be elected back in the parliament, what will happen, even just for signing it. Because these organizations started to threaten each one of these parliament members. You will never get re-elected. We will make sure that the people will scrutinize you. So many MPs got scared, and we thought that the bill will not go further. Out of 40 people who originally signed the bill in the parliament, the numbers started to become less and less. The former prime minister went to European Parliament and became European Commissioner. Other MEPs went to Europe. Substitute members came into the parliament who were not supporting the law, so we lost already 6 people. So the numbers of 40 started to decline very fast because the progressive people had gone to Europe, who were co-signers of the bill, but now we had to find a solution. Then something happened which also has not happened before in Estonia ever. The overnight, spontaneous public movement, not funded by anybody, was started on internet over one night. And it was 4 people, 4 straight people, who decided we have to do something. There was 2 married couples, and they were consulted by one human rights expert, And they said, let's do something because Estonian society cannot take that anymore, because the voice, anti-voice had grown so big. It was abnormal already. And threats came to members of parliament. I was personally threatened to be killed many times. Once almost killed in our main square in Tallinn. And of course these stories came to media. Members of parliament got threatening letters from this organization and from abroad. Many letters came from Moscow. Many letters came also from other countries. So it was beyond our borders already, the whole debate. And then this overnight movement, which is called Apaļā, this was the traditional family protection, this big foundation that was funded. So the pro movement, they took their name and said, thank you, but our traditional family doesn't need your protection. And that was these two straight couples with their children who came public, said, we are two traditional families, but thank you, we don't need your protection. And this was named to be the thank you movement. And this thank you movement became so big that over one night 5,000 people signed up. Over 1 week 15,000 people signed up on Facebook page. Now they had already like 20,000 people around Estonia who supported the thank you movement. And the opponents, the traditional family, they had only 4,500. So the amount of people who supported has grown already 4 times bigger than the traditional movement. And that showed the kind of underlying currents in the society. Although official polls still said about 60% of people are against the possible cohabitation act. But they were mostly old people. If you looked at different age segments, the young people under 25 were the most supportive, and like 60–70% of them supported. And the older the age groups went, the less support there was, which is also very logical. So over 60, there was only 6 or 7% to cohabitation act, and under 25, there was 80% support. So that showed the demographic situation in Estonia, and pretty much the same in every country. So then the anti-campaign threatened that they are going to have the biggest demonstration ever created in Estonia. They said there will be 50,000 people coming to the streets, marching against the bill, and then to have some kind of a balance to that, this thank you movement invited some people in Estonia, the most respectable people that Estonia everybody accepts and loves, famous actors, sportsmen, our top football player, straight as a bull, all the people who you wouldn't expect that they say anything about the cohabitation bill, and they all came to support. They said that we think it is necessary in Estonia that everybody's rights should be protected, and if anybody wants to register their life together with somebody else, it should be their free will. That was their message. Actors, movie actors, television personalities, scientists, professors, really like top people whose opinion nobody disputes in Estonia. And 40 of these people put up their self-made videos on YouTube. And this Apaļā, the thank you movement, distributed these YouTube videos where these people, the opinion leaders, with their own words, they are given 1 minute, with their own words are telling their story and giving support to the Cohabitation Act. That created, of course, a lot of positive media. And from that moment on, media was very much focused against the movement who got money from abroad. And since they also didn't disclose where the money is coming from for the anti-campaign, media came very much pro-cohabitation bill. I think almost all newspapers, with the exception of one, started very strongly to support cohabitation bill, and these 40 opinion leaders including. So probably because of this very strong positive push to the support Cohabitation Act. The big demonstration of 50,000 people, police force was preparing for weeks for that. How to deal with this 50,000 people actually turned out to be a little bit less than 1,000. 800 and 900, there were really radical extremists who were fighting against it in front of the parliament. So that kind of broke the neck of the anti-campaign. And the mood on the parliament floor started to go up again, that okay, if the public opinion, at least the media and opinion leaders on our own side, maybe will come back, and people started to support again on the parliament floor. Then the Obama famous speech in Tallinn, he made his historic speech in Tallinn, probably the biggest political speech ever anybody has ever made in Estonia. It was really powerful, and in his speech he also protected supports of minorities and their rights to live their life there. So this Obama's word was also a little extra added moment when we needed it the most in the parliament. And then the last resort against us was the massive email pressure. Members of parliament started to get hundreds of emails. The parliament email crashed down. Basically, you could not anymore select your normal emails because parliament was overloaded with mails coming from specially made robots that create mails against the Cohabitation Act. And these engines who sent these emails basically brought down the parliament website. And then parliament had to apply special measures that if so many mails are coming together, all the mails are blocked. There was again big debate in Estonia, is that right or wrong? But we couldn't exist in the parliament without actually being able to do our job every day. And then second reading passed in the parliament after lengthy debate, probably the most emotional speeches ever made in the parliament. 5 o'clock in the morning, after the 2.5 days of debates and some extensive measures taken by the Conservative Party to delay the proceedings and never let it to be voted. All these obstruction methods did not work, and at 5 o'clock in the morning we finally came to the vote of the second reading, and the parliament passed it at the second reading. And since the procedures were delayed, the original voting of the second reading was pushed forward and forward several days, but the third reading was already decided when that happens. So then we actually had only less than 24 hours between the second reading and the third reading. And then the 9th of October, the big victory day. 40 pro, 38 against. Many obtained, many didn't come. That was the final outcome. What is important is because the heat became so big, parties decided to leave it up to the individual members of parliament. No party took a decision to support or not, because elections coming and everybody was afraid what's going to happen. The voice of anti-campaign was so strong that members of parliament were really afraid to lose their jobs already and then being killed because they were threatened. So every party left, with the exception of Conservatives, they decided unanimously to vote against, but 3 parties left it to the decision of their members how they vote. So nobody knew what is going to be the outcome. Nobody knew, is it going to go through or not, because nobody knew deep down inside how finally people are going to vote once they have to make the decision. And so I think this is, I've been in the parliament for 12 years and I don't remember. Usually parties make deals. Usually you pretty much know where the vote is going because either coalition makes the agreement, you can see the outcome. But that was the first bill in the parliament. Nobody knew what is going to be the final situation. Is it going to pass? Not. How people are going to vote, because it was a matter of their conscience. In their heart, are they going to support people's right or not? In accordance with the Constitution. So it will. The act was passed, but between the first and second readings, we had to take out many paragraphs that demanded 51 votes. That's the full majority of the parliament. 50 plus 1 is 51 votes. And this vote went through with a simple majority. 40 out of 101 pro and 38 against. For certain paragraphs, like court decisions, we need minimum 51 votes. So we couldn't have these paragraphs in the law because it would have never gone through. So we lifted out from the Cohabitation Act the paragraphs that will definitely not pass, and we left it for the future, and we left as much in as possible, and that enabled us to pass it with a simple majority, 40-38. And leaving it now for the next parliament, the current parliament, to do the necessary steps. Basically what it ended up being was the political statement that the Estonian parliament decided yes to the Cohabitation Act. It will come to effect 1st of January 2016. But in order for it fully to come to effect, 95 other laws have to be changed. Because Cohabitation Act is touching so many different areas, starting from child support all the way to military services, for instance, a general's spouse, or Estonian president's law, a president and his or her husband or wife or spouse or partner or whatever. Everything there is something to do with family connection has to be changed. And we have 95 laws. Diplomatic acts. Estonian diplomat representing us in US, at the moment he can only take his wife with him, but then he would have to take, would be able to take also a registered partner. So basically any law that we have that currently says husband or spouse, you and the spouse, there we have to add a small thing, a comma or a registered partner. So this little thing has to be added into 95 laws. But that, if you put it in the context, it creates a lot of additional debates, whether certain cases it's acceptable for people or not. For instance, are Estonian people ready that the first lady is a man, not the wife? For instance, we don't have first man, such a institution is president and the first lady, you know, but I've never heard president and the first man. So things like that.
In Latvia.
we had one.
Well, officially was it?
No, we had a female president.
Yes.
Oh yeah. But then did she have a first lady? Here's the point. Here's the problem. But that was the situation, and now we have until the 1st of January to make these amendments into 95 laws. Very emotional moment was at the same day when the Cohabitation Act was passed. People started to bring thousands of flowers in front of Estonian Parliament, is Riigikogu, and in the morning they started to bring in, and because news went on the media and YouTube and Facebook and everywhere, people started to bring spontaneously more and more flowers. By the end of the day, the whole Parliament floor, in front of the whole Parliament, was just covered with a sea of flowers. And that act is just from the many people to come and say thank you for the Parliament for standing strong, for fighting for all the people's rights. And here is our youngest in the world, currently still Prime Minister. He's 35, and he's with the most famous TV personality who's openly gay. Newscast. He's a news anchor of the Estonian state television. He's the journalist of Estonia, journalist of the year for the last 5 or 6 years, so he's the most respected news anchor. And together with their picture here, I think the fact that our Prime Minister, new young Prime Minister, came to support the law. He was hesitant first because I said the government decided not to do it. It was too risky before the elections. But the very final moment when the Prime Minister came also to support it, that gave a final push for the law. So the battle is not over. We have to still change the 93 laws, 93 or 95, something like that. It's unfortunately only a political statement so far. It is not usable, it's not yet practical until the other laws are changed. We have, because of this whole process, we have two brand new parties in the parliament who came to the parliament mostly 90% thanks to the writing on the ticket of the Cohabitation Act. One of them, the National Conservatives, grew out of this anti-movement and were directly supported from them. They got 7 seats now in the parliament, and they are extremely radical. They are similar to True Finns in Finland or Marine Le Pen party in France. They are in the same alliance with them, so extreme nationalist conservatives. They are in the parliament. We have another new party in the parliament whose position is vague, but many of their opponents, many of their members have also been vocally very strong against the cohabitation law. So a lot of obstacles on the way, and currently we don't know if we're starting to... We have two options now. Either take each one of these 93 bills and change them one by one, which means that every bill has to come through the parliament, and every time there's a new debate. With some things, probably there's less debate than the others. For instance, the president's example was one of them, but maybe it's some hospital visitation is not such a big question, that will pass easily. But regardless of that, the other way, what we can do is we can write one bill that automatically changes all these 93 bills. And so with one bill, we can change the whole situation, and then we are in compliance too. So we will be able to complete it before the 1st of January. How is it going to go? I don't know yet. But the fact is that the political statement has been made, the law is in place, Parliament has a duty now to amend these 93 laws, because if you have said A, you have to say B. If Parliament is not doing that during this year, then probably some legal cases will go to the Supreme Court. Some people will say that our rights are not protected, and they will go to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court then will have to say to the Parliament, you have made a step A, you have to make a step B, because you have yourself obliged to do so. So that is the second chance. And these two new parties, we know that one of them for sure will vote against. They already started a procedure in the parliament to change the constitution, to write out the family definition in the Estonian constitution. And the family definition, according to them, is man, his married wife, better in church even, and 2 children. That's the definition, their definition of Estonian family. So I hope that their wishes do not realize that Estonia will continue on the road of openness and democracy and respecting everybody's rights. I really hope that Latvia will make also your steps here. I wish you good luck. And you know that if needed, we will come with the flowers from Estonia and demonstrate in front of your parliament. But it's going to be definitely a rocky ride, as it has been in Estonia. We were the first in the former Soviet Union countries who did it, and we want you to follow. And that is the only thing that really separates us from the former system called the Soviet Union. So let's hope that we will be all in the same united family of basic human rights and freedoms that the world has come to accept over the world. Thank you so much.